He's often called the most influential manager in modern German football. In fact, at the start of the 2020-2021 season of the Bundesliga, 7 managers across the 18 clubs had all worked with or under Ralf Rangnick in some capacity. And his shaping of the Red Bull football group, his involvement in developing RB Salzburg and RB Leipzig and others, is still felt to this day, helping them shape their identity on the pitch and philosophy of running the club off of it. It's no wonder he's so sought after. Hey, I'm Adrian and welcome to Rabona TV, where today, similarly to our video on Erik ten Hag, we'll be going through all of the reasons as to why Ralf Rangnick is becoming a much talked about figure in the managerial sphere of things. And I'll be running some questions by a good friend of the channel and someone who I actually have a podcast with, Manuel Witt, as well as Filippo from Tactical Manager TV and Josh from JGD TV. They're not in this video, but they're in the podcast. So check it out. We post weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. And I'm back from Europe, and OneFootball is back supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. If you want to follow the never-ending managerial merry-go-round of European football, then OneFootball has got you covered. Follow your favorite players, teams, competitions, and countries, and your homepage will be custom tailored to your liking. Watch highlights, interviews, and even some live matches. Track transfers, follow matches live, and so much more. Use the link in the description or scan this QR code for a free download of OneFootball, and you'll help us out in the process. Thanks guys, very much appreciated. Let's get going back to the, 1980s, 1990s or so. Ralf Rangnick is another German coach that started his managerial career at a very young age. In his case, at the age of 19 for youth teams and 25 for senior teams, when he took over as a player coach at FC Viktoria Backnang, a 6th division side in Germany at the time. In 1984, he would take his first steps into becoming one of the individuals at the cutting edge of the now incredibly popular gegenpressing, after his Viktoria Backnang side would be the sacrificial lambs to Dynamo Kiev. The Ukrainian, formerly Soviet side was staying nearby in Germany and needed to play friendly against a weaker opposition just to keep their legs fresh. Dynamo Kiev were managed by Valery Lobanovsky, a legendary figure in Soviet football, and the way his side suffocated Rangnick's left a lasting impression on him. Speaking to the coach's voice, Rangnick said, quote, "A few minutes in, when the ball had gone out for a throw-in, I had to stop and count their players. Something was wrong. Did they have 13 or 14 men on the pitch? I had played against top teams before. We always lost against them, of course, but they had at least given you the occasional moment of breathing space. Kiev were the first team I had ever come up against who systemically pressed the ball. That was my football epiphany. I understood that there was a different way of playing." This suffocating way of playing that was employed by Lobanovsky sent Rangnick down the path to develop the now famous gegenpressing. Gegenpressing would ultimately be a mix of what Arrigo Sacchi was doing at AC Milan with his ball-oriented zonal marking and cohesive movement, as well as the pressing game that Kiev had introduced him to. In the late 80s, he also met Helmut Gross, and they began studying Sacchi's immortal AC Milan side, and even began writing out coaching manuals, all the while making his way up through the ranks of German football. By the time the late 90s had rolled around, Rangnick had established himself as a forward-thinking brain in German football, appearing on TV to present his tactical approach live, his black suit and rimless glasses leading to some calling him the Professor. At first it was to poke fun at him, but later as a show of respect, given his influence on German football. Whenever Rangnick is mentioned, his influence over other current top-level German managers, Tuchel, Klopp, etc., is always brought up. So how far does his influence reach when it comes to the tactics used by modern German coaches?
Oh, wow. It's huge. It's really huge. I think when you look at any top coach in German football at the moment, they either have worked with him directly, have been selected by him, or been influenced by a coach that has worked directly with him, right? So his reach is enormous. You just need to look on the whole Red Bull apparatus and all the coaches that they have developed in recent years. But you also go, even guys like Klopp and Tuchel and all those people, they all been influenced by him as well. And we're talking about a guy, and I remember this so well when he was still the head coach of Ulm in the 90s, in the late 90s, and helped him guide the Bundesliga, which was like a huge story. Back then, German clubs still played with a libero, a sweeper. People will be watching this video and say, well, what? This is like prehistoric, and it is. And he went on German television and explained what they call in German the Viererkette, so forward to back. like a flat 4, right, without a libero. And from then on, he was the professor, but he built like quite a reputation of being this tactical genius and being able to really advance tactics that were previously not used in German football and put a stamp on it. And yeah, his influence is incredible. I mean, you name a coach and he's probably had some sort of influence on that. And it goes back to the entire tactical revolution of German football that started in the late 90s, early 2000s, and eventually led to Germany win the World Cup. All of that would not have been possible without Ralf Rangnick.
And now another name that's often tossed out there is Wolfgang Frank.
Yes.
What would you say would be the differences in the two sort of aspects that they each brought to German football?
Well, Wolfgang Frank and Rangnick are connected, right? So I think the difference really is that Rangnick had high-profile jobs, and I think that makes it a lot more visible. And I mean, first and foremost, Rangnick did work at Hoffenheim, a club. I mean, this is all after Ulm, right? Ulm was sort of the first testing ground, and he was very successful with them. And then he went to Stuttgart, which was a job that didn't quite work out so well. And then he was at Schalke, and then eventually he ended up at Hoffenheim, a club that he built from the ground up and turned into a Bundesliga side, and briefly actually challenged for the title the year that they were promoted. And at some point that project ran its course. There was problems, of course, with Dietmar Hopp as well, and the future outlook of the club. They had different views on how it should go, and then he left and joined Leipzig, Red Bull, and became part of the Leipzig hierarchy later down. And I think that's really where the big difference is, that he was far more visible in terms of what he's done in German football, but also in terms of the projects that he successfully concluded. I think both Hoffenheim and RB Leipzig, or Red Bull in general, because it's not just Leipzig. You look at Salzburg. We're both on the Unsuckable podcast, and two weeks ago we spoke at big lengths about Salzburg and what they have done. That's not possible without Ralf Rangnick, and I think that's why he puts such a bigger stamp on football, visible stamp. Both had their influences. Without Frank, there is no Rangnick. Right, and without Rangnick, there is no modern German football as we have it today.
Here's Rangnick explaining what gegenpressing is. Quote, "Gegenpressing is a very proactive style of football, similar to the way in which Borussia Dortmund and Liverpool have been playing under Klopp. We like to press high, with a very intense counter pressure. When we have the ball, we do not like any square or back passes. It is a fast, proactive, attacking, counter-attacking, counter-pressing, exciting, and entertaining style of football." Rangnick built a bit of a reputation of taking teams to the next level, quite literally, in German football. Perhaps the first most notable achievement of his would be how he took Ulm 1846 up to the Bundesliga for the first time in their history, first and only time, where they spent one season there. Then it was Hannover 96's turn. Hanover was playing in the second Bundesliga when Rangnick took over, but in just one season, he managed to take them to first in the league and prompted the return to the Bundesliga after a 13-year absence. He also did some good things in his first stint with Schalke, but it was at Hoffenheim where we really saw the true power of Rangnick and his gegenpressing. Rangnick joined the club in 2006 when they were still in the third tier of German football. He got them promoted to the second Bundesliga on his first attempt, and from there, he instantly shot them up to the Bundesliga for the 2008-2009 season. They impressed in the Bundesliga, putting up a good fight, but faltering in the second half of the season. However, it was here where Rangnick thinks his version of football truly became popularized. Quote, "What we did in Hoffenheim had a lot of influence on German football. I remember our first year in the Bundesliga in 2008, we played Borussia Dortmund under Jurgen Klopp, who came from Mainz, to Dortmund, and we dominated them 4-1. It could easily have been 6 or 7 because we continuously pressed them for the entire game. The following week, Jurgen said that this is exactly the style of football he wants to play with Dortmund in the future. During the next 2 years, he developed his team in such an impressive manner that they managed to win 2 consecutive championship titles and 2 cups. Rangnick ultimately left Hoffenheim in 2011, with the sale of Luis Gustavo believed to be part of his motivation for leaving, as he wasn't notified of the sale, and the man likes to be involved in every decision at the club. And after a second stint with Schalke, in which they notably made it to the Champions League semi-finals in 2011, he took a break from football before cropping up again at RB Salzburg. I'm curious to hear this from you, Manu. Given the clubs he's been associated with in Germany, Hoffenheim, Leipzig, how is he viewed in his own country. Is he given his just rights as one of the top brains, or is he sort of written off as like the plastic guy?
No. I think people are very much aware that he is the first and foremost tactical genius that has spawned this new era of German football. He's not always the easiest character, 100%. I mean, people recognize that, but he's always right. He's one of those people that get into a job and they will criticize certain things and certain aspects about a club and the things that are wrong, and he will change them. He has that ability to identify problems and fix them. And fixing problems is not always popular. I mean, the Salzburg, the Red Bull thing is interesting because before he went into the Red Bull umbrella, Salzburg was not a team that developed talents. They would buy all these old guys from the German Bundesliga and, hope for the best. And he completely changed that. He completely changed the way of thinking. And I think people recognize that he's an academic, first and foremost. He can be difficult to work with, but he's definitely understood as being a tactical genius and someone who tends to be right and be able to build clubs from the ground up and to change the culture of an organization to the better.
And speaking of which, with the Red Bull football umbrella, as we've been calling it, their scouting system, their academies, their philosophy, would it be too far to say that they've almost become a representation of Rangnick and what he believes in football-wise?
Yeah, I think so. That's probably the project where he had a lot more creativity, because at Hoffenheim, the financial willingness of investor Dietmar Hopp had its borders. Leipzig and Salzburg and the Red Bull Empire in general, they don't have financial borders other than the ones set by UEFA, financial fair play. Believe it or not, there is teams out there that actually hold to the principle of FFP, and the Red Bull Empire is one of them. Probably also because they're being closely watched by UEFA because of the links between the different clubs, right? In fairness, but Dieter Mateschitz, the owner of Red Bull, is a very ambitious man, and we have to always remember that. So in terms of the infrastructure investment and the money that was poured in, there weren't any boundaries. And Rangnick made the most out of that. And this, I spoke about that already before, that Salzburg is a club that I've visited many times. And they are an amazing club in terms of infrastructure and what they have in terms of training facility, in terms of the stadium is world class. It's a beautiful stadium, and the fact that Liefering, their development team, is close by, and just the way it's all structured, and that's all his work, and it shows, like, his fingerprints are all over that. And when the same in Leipzig, it's another team. Hardcore fans in Germany like to poo-poo all over Leipzig, right? But the fact is that that's a well-constructed club. And it's a very well-constructed club that even if they had this year, they had some hiccups to start the season with, they have a plan. They always seem to have a plan, and there seems to be always a structure in place to work onwards. And that's, again, like, his fingerprints are all over that. He brought Leipzig into the Bundesliga. Within 1 year, turned them into a Champions League side. People are saying, like, well, okay, like, he had the money and money for it. But we've seen lots of other teams that didn't have that instant success. Including teams that have way more money. I mean, it will be interesting to see if Newcastle United can ever replicate that. I personally have my doubts, right? And Manchester City took quite a long time, and they have a way bigger budget. And I think those are things, you look at all of that, and you look at what Red Bull is today, and the coaches that come out of Red Bull, whether it's Jesse Marsch, whether it's Geisler, who's now at Salzburg, who's doing a fantastic job, Marco Rose, the list goes on. Like, Adi Hütter is another one, right? Oliver Glasner, all these guys, they're all connected to Red Bull in one way or another. Ralf Hasenhüttl is another one in England, and maybe a guy who one day will take over Manchester United if Rangnick ever takes that job. I think his fingerprints are all over that, and I think it speaks for itself.
Taking on the role at Salzburg and eventually at RB Leipzig, some of the players and coaches that have been discovered and developed under Rangnick's watch, and as a direct benefit or consequence of the tremendous scouting networks he has set up, the youth development, and the proximity of the farm team, so to speak, to the clubs, the philosophy on and off the pitch, it's stunning. Look at the players who have come through the Red Bull system in the last few years, how Leipzig have surged through the standings and become Champions League mainstays, and the same could be said of Salzburg as well, winning an endless amount of trophies domestically and becoming mainstays in the Champions League now, an Austrian club. We've covered a lot, thankfully, because it's a huge part of his career, about how he builds these clubs up and how he gets his fingerprints all over them, and he really instills like a a very clear philosophy of how to run the club. And so, speaking of the role that he's played for Red Bull, as well as the role he currently has at Lokomotiv also, which you said is more of a consultancy role.
Yeah.
But do you think that he's more interested in this side of football as opposed to actually being the manager on the pitch and the tactical side of the game still?
I think so. And he took that Leipzig job the year that they waited for Nagelsmann, right? He made quite clear that he would only take a head coaching role or manager role in English under exceptional circumstances. And even a sporting director role, I think, would be under exceptional circumstances. He sees himself more as like a person above that, and so he would be in a role where he would be a manager of sorts, but there would be people underneath him that would do more of the day-to-day stuff, right? Like he wants to build a strategy and lay down sort of like the same way he's done at Leipzig, where he really just works in the background and like puts in the infrastructure and the foundation for so a club can be successful. And I think he's made that quite clear. That doesn't mean, he said that himself, under exceptional circumstances, he could see himself coaching another club.
Another big thank you to Manu for joining me. And if you want to hear more conversations between myself, Manu, Filippo, and Josh, do be sure to follow our podcast linked below. We do speak about Rangnick and his links to Manchester United. Other than that, I thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and remember to subscribe if you're new around here. My name is Adrian. This is Rabona TV, and have a great day. Ciao.